Everyone, we wanted to give a quick update. We arrived in the Netherlands a couple of days ago. Arrived with beautiful friends, actually, who are also part of the Mimetic Academy.
Oh, Netherlands.
And we just arrived back from a conference in Rome, the COV&R conference, which really just exceeded our expectations in so many ways. And maybe you can just give a theme of what the conference was about, so we have a bit of context.
The cover, or Colloquium for Violence and Religion, happens every year and has for decades around the thoughts of René Girard. And this year, it was around this theme of people who consider themselves spiritual but not religious, which is really unique in the history of mankind.
It is, yeah.
And it shed light on that area of how do we distinguish individual spirituality from religious behavior in such insightful ways. So we began the weekend with, I think it's Professor Jeffrey Hansen.
From Harvard University.
He looks after a program called Human Flourishing Program, and they've done studies all across the world, asking people who, in these different categories, the kind of questions that gives them insight into how they are flourishing. And the results were quite insightful. People who attend some kind of religious gathering on a regular weekly basis.
And that was interesting because it didn't seem to matter what you believed.
It had nothing to do with what you believe.
Yeah.
If you just get together
Yeah.
on a regular basis, there seems to be a lot of benefits in terms of health, welfare, mental health, etc.
Longevity.
And there was such an interesting kind of sub-study done as well, where people who no longer attend religious meetings have a much greater allegiance to brands. So the kind of clothing I wear, the kind of car I drive. It seems like even if you take the traditional kind of religious behavior away, people still want to gather around and be part of some community, even if it's as shallow as a brand.
We show our allegiance somewhere.
Yes. It reminds me of the fact that the word religion, coming from Old French and then back into Latin, one of the etymological kind of basis for the words is probably the Latin word that means to bind together. In other words, what is a theme in which I can find a community, and this theme is what binds us together. So that was very insightful, and a good kind of empirical basis on which to start this whole conversation.
And really it was a conversation. What was so unique as well was you had somebody presenting their paper, their presentation, and then somebody afterwards giving...
Loved that.
Yeah, just giving another view, opening it up to questions. So it was really about the conversation, whereas, you know, we've been in a lot of settings as well in the past where...
Don't question.
Yeah.
And don't contradict.
Yes. So
all.
that was very refreshing. Something personally for me that was just so encouraging. You know, we've been over the last number of years, we've introduced to students on our course to various settings where we've been, contemplative practice, and just the benefit and the value of that, of creating that inner space. And then we've also been introducing the ideas of mimetic theory and mimetic desire, and to see in some of these sessions, just the bringing together and complementing of these ideas. We had, for instance, Brian Robionet, who's so beautiful. We've actually introduced his book, Grammars of Resurrection, on so many occasions, and how he spoke about the two of those coming together, and it was just so
theory and contemplative practices. Yeah,
and it was just so affirming and encouraging in terms of what we've been doing.
So many beautiful insights. After him, James Addison spoke on this new mythology, this giving of God's Spirit, and beautifully showed how the whole life of Jesus was this process of God giving his Spirit that culminates in him breathing his last breath, this
when
beautiful giving.
Breathes upon them, breathes his life, his Spirit, and it's symbolized by these flames. And it's these individual flames upon each of their heads, and they start speaking in another tongue. And then the people around understand them in their own language. And what was so beautifully highlighted for me was just the interpretation, that your individual, unique interpretation, the breathing of God's breath and life upon you, his Spirit upon you, you are a unique expression, a unique flame, a unique expression of God's Spirit, of God's reality, of God's life in this world.
That's right. It was that word, diverse tongues. It's like a beautiful translation of that thing, that there's a very unique expression that God's Spirit finds in you.
And that your life is an interpretation of God in this world. Isn't that beautiful?
It is. I know many of you asked whether some of the sessions were recorded. Mine was not, so I hope to, in the next couple of weeks, find a gap in which I'll just chat about the content of that paper. But there's a beautiful opportunity that exists between individual freedom and collective communal belonging. And I think we are going through a creative phase in which the collective and the individual are being rebalanced. They don't necessarily have to be opposed. There's opportunity for new creativity of what community and spirituality means. So I'll hopefully get that done soon.
Makes me think as well, how important language is, how we language things. And I think your session brought out so beautifully possibilities of being that we open ourselves up to. And I just thought how language is such a beautiful tool, but how it can become so constrictive and prescriptive that we lose the ability to include or embrace people with our language. And I think it was Bishop Rowan Williams who brought out how we should allow our language to surprise us, find new ways of expressing, and
because it's almost like very certain and dogmatic language is more likely to become idolatrous, because it tries to capture this is God and this is how we understand him. Whereas we know that language is never going to capture the fullness of reality or the fullness of God. And so we should invite reality to expand and transform our language to become more flexible, more living, more changing with the shape of the living Spirit within it. We, as Marianne said, we're in the Netherlands at the moment. This weekend we've got a beautiful weekend function. We look forward to seeing some of you then. Then it's Switzerland, Austria, and Hungary.
Yeah.
In Hungary, we'll be not only with the local community, but also a Lutheran church that we're looking forward to. And hopefully during this period, we'll do another update. And as I said, maybe a chat on the paper.
Appreciate you all.
Yes, bye.